In the tweaker geographic habitat, questionable choices are considered especially cinematic. The civilians who study these creatures are part of an elite team known as the comment section. These are their stories. No individuals were harmed in the making of this compilation. This is a parody documentary. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, the street is pure floodwater, until a drenched specimen crawls out like Jiraiya, infiltrating the hidden rain village. He rises on the soaked pavement, unfazed, like this was the mission. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, two tweakers roam the street, one hauling a Walmart bag like precious loot. The other unleashes a full Walking Dead shuffle. Yet the soda never spills, not even a drop. Zero balance, elite grip. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a tweaker is offered pizza, an ancient peace offering. He accepts, straightens himself up, wipes the face, and chews like a civilized member of society. For a brief moment, the habitat witnesses hope. Then reality hits. No meth. The performance collapses instantly. He hurls the pizza and the box to the ground, storms off, and snaps right back into chaos. Like the normal human routine was just a short audition. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, two tweakers take over the nighttime sidewalk for the ancient street ritual of unpaid Broadway. She leads, barefoot, towel-caped, chanting like she's casting spells, while her partner joins in, bouncing off the wall like a hype man. They spin, they shout, they perform for an invisible crowd. And the city pretends it's normal. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we observe an urban drifter escorting her supply stroller through the concrete wild. The tweaker initiates a deeply personal crack-cleaning ritual, now inspecting the residue. The tweaker then promotes the cloth, straight to facial use, completing a full hygiene betrayal. She stops, she inhales, she seems pleased. Experts agree. At this stage of evolution, disgust has gone extinct. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, the creature reaches for the hornet's nest with a black bag and gets stung immediately, instantly activates panic mode and spills off the can like a dropped burrito. In the air, we witness the rare moment a tweaker realizes consequences are, in fact, real. And the nest? Still standing, smug, victorious. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's a wild tweaker. Already 30 feet in the air, he has evolved beyond sidewalks and into public infrastructure. The stoplight becomes his nest. From above, he challenges gravity and authority. Below, police deploy a massive inflatable cushion. Commands are issued and instantly ignored. With diplomacy extinct, officers deploy the tweaker tranquilizer. The subject believes he can fly. Gravity disagrees. The cushion catches him, and the ecosystem is restored. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we observe a male tweaker attempting what he believes is transportation. He stole a kid's bike, later reclassified as a tweaker tricycle. The creature then begins attaching his prized possession, the tweaker trailer. Victorious, the tweaker mounts the child's bike, now fully upgraded, and rides off proudly. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a tweaker waddles in full hunchback mode, back folded like a lawn chair, making a determined beeline for a stranger to ask what's probably directions. The pink hoodie says, harmless. The posture says, side quest. And the energy says, congratulations. You've been selected for a confusing conversation, with no skip button. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a tweaker carefully places the cup on top, then pedals through the wild with a cup and 3 soda cans balanced on his head, because excellence demands risk. He wobbles, steadies, and rides off into the sunset like a carbonated lighthouse, leaving everyone staring like they just saw a magic trick performed by poor judgment. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a tweaker in a black car attempts the ancient ritual of "I can make it through," and drives into floodwater. The current instantly disagrees, snatching the car like a bath toy and dragging it downstream. In the end, she's on top of the car, still being carried away, clinging to it like the river will accept a refund. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, scientists believe they've discovered a tweaker from outer space. After a crash landing in the concrete jungle, scientists believe this tweaker is on a mission in search for Methlantis. Experts admit they have no idea what this is, where it came from, or why it's still here. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a tweaker unleashes smooth criminal choreography in a parking lot. Snaps, shuffles and moonwalks like the curb owes him rent. The convenience store stands behind him like a disappointed stage manager. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, an inmate tweaker hits the concrete and starts the sacred floor ritual, crawling, slapping the ground, rolling around, and screaming for help at full volume. Nearby specimens watch from their chairs, acting like this is just another day in the habitat. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we observe the North American Dollar General Sentinel emerging at dusk to guard its territory. Wrapped in a ceremonial cardboard exoskeleton, this creature believes itself invincible. The box serves as armor, shelter, and emotional support. Shoppers pass cautiously, unsure if this is a man, a moving recycling bin, or a warning from the future. Here, in front of discounted snacks and expired dreams, nature truly is healing, just not correctly. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, in the concrete wastelands, two female tweakers engage in a territorial dispute. Armed with wheelchairs and confidence, they circle aggressively. Threat calls are exchanged, none of which affect the outcome. The battle ends in a draw, as both roll away convinced they absolutely won. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we spot Robin Hood the tweaker himself in the woods behind a Walmart. We observe him digging through his vehicle, a mobile nest with a fence barricaded window. He spots the drone and grabs a bow and arrow, his weapon of choice. Last effective in the year 1374. His aim is confident, his understanding of physics is not. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a tweaker performs the rare travelator starfish, limbs out, hovering on pure audacity, while the moving walkway carries him like a ceremonial offering. He glides past in a boredom-born yoga pose. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, two tweaker mobiles sit parked curbside like a DIY car show. First, a car made of cardboard, arts and crafts with headlights. Next, an animated ride with a donut spare because safety is optional. Then the creator gets arrested, proof even cartoons get cancelled. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we encounter Captain Crack Sparrow, also known to locals as Captain Jack Daniels. This tweaker pirate isn't searching for treasure or the Black Pearl, just vibes, validation, and his next port of poor decision. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a tweaker squats roadside and begins slurping from a puddle like it's gourmet soup of the day. He chews thoughtfully, then discovers a long, hair-like noodle in the mud and still keeps going, proving the stomach is brave, but the standards are extinct. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a lone tweaker warrior emerges at a gas station. He battles an ancient tweaker demon, striking first, asking questions never. Experts believe the enemy is winning, but the battle must go on. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we encounter the Florida highway tweaker, a man who sees an active highway and an apex predator and thinks, yeah, I can fix this. As cars and semis rocket past him at lethal speed, repeatedly denying fate, he approaches the gator with the confidence of someone who has never learned a lesson. Using advanced techniques such as aggressive hand motions, incoherent yelling, and pure chemical optimism, the tweaker attempts to assert dominance. The gator thinks otherwise. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we encounter a truly bewildering sidewalk specimen, dressed in what experts can only describe as a confused blend of thrift store clearance and absolute confidence. Armed with a ribboned stick of unknown origin, the subject performs spins, twirls, and skips as if summoned by music no one else can hear. Researchers believe this display may be part of a mating ritual or an open audition for Tweaker's Got Talent. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, two Tweaker females ignite their lightsabers and chase a lone male down the street like it's a low-budget Jedi purge. They swing wildly, connect with absolutely nothing, and he slips away. One Tweaker then falls, defeated not by the Force, but by the sidewalk. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a semi-truck rolls up to a crowd of protesters and makes the fatal choice to stop. Instantly, they swarm the cab like World War Z, climbing, pounding, surrounding, turning one quiet moment into a full-blown apocalypse simulation. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, we witness a rare creature performing its tusk-brushing ritual. Tweaker tusks are highly valued on the black market, making the species a prime target for poachers. Approaching requires extreme caution. If provoked, it can deliver a bite force exceeding 475 psi. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a female tweaker signals what appears to be a service opportunity. Experts warn participation may result in regret, confusion, and lifelong questions. Researchers also note this could be the opening move of an illegal dice game commonly played by tweakers. Either way, experts strongly advise against engaging. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, researchers encounter a rare tweaker troll guarding her nesting site. A tangled cluster of tents fused together into what experts believe is a fully operational tweaker hive. The troll stands watch outside the nest, surveying the concrete jungle for threats, resources, or absolutely nothing at all. After a brief territorial display, she decides the outside world is overrated and retreats safely back into the hive, sealing herself inside the nest. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen turns a random bottle into a full instrument. He spins it non-stop, flips it under his legs, bounces it off his palm, and keeps the rhythm like the bottle's magnetized. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, researchers stumble upon a rare concrete jungle pizza party. The kitchen, tarps and blowtorches for ovens. The female tweakers are seen preparing their famous pie, Tweakeroni pizza. But the celebration is briefly interrupted. One male specimen spots the research drone overhead, conducts a swift tactical hand check inside the shorts, and deploys the universal signal of diplomacy, the middle finger. The concrete jungle pizza party continues. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen attempts upright walking while absolutely marinated. He sways like an invisible force is dragging him down, but he refuses, clutching the bottle like it's sacred. He wobbles, recovers, then takes another sip, because clearly the cure is more damage. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, researchers document a male tweaker attempting parkour. The jump is attempted. The jump fails. The shoulder takes the blame. The tweaker, pretending nothing happened, leaps onto a light pole, believing confidence is a substitute for strength. Gravity intervenes. A slide down the pole is followed by a backflip attempt. Unsuccessful, but oddly ambitious. Now enraged, the tweaker removes his shirt and attacks the pole, which remains completely unbothered. Defeated, the tweaker stomps off, convinced the pole won. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, researchers observe a lone tweaker performing what appears to be an ancient fire ritual behind a row of commercial dumpsters. Unafraid of the flames, the species repeatedly walks directly through the fire, possibly asserting dominance, or simply forgetting it's there. After several ceremonial passes, the tweaker attempts fire control by dragging it away with a cardboard box. Experts confirm this does absolutely nothing. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, someone really messed up. Researchers arrive at a family carnival and are horrified to discover the ride operator is working while visibly operating on pure chemical motivation. This is the merry-go-round. Eyes bugged, jaw clenched, arms locked straight. The specimen aggressively launches the ride like he's fighting it for dominance. Witnesses confirm the ride is full of children. Researchers agree. Those kids just aged about 10 years in 25 seconds. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen undergoes a sudden evolutionary relapse and becomes a T-Rex in a hallway. He slaps his chest, tucks his arms into tiny dinosaur mode, and lets out those prehistoric screeches, head cocked back like he's calling the whole neighborhood to Jurassic Court. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen leans in and kisses a mannequin like he's been waiting all day for this reunion. He holds it way too long, then starts talking to her like she's about to answer back. The mannequin stays silent because she's the only adult here. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen pulls up to a Ring camera and immediately chooses the worst possible customer service approach. He pokes the camera with a pitchfork, like it's going to open the door faster, then upgrades to an axe and starts swinging at the lens, like he's trying to delete evidence in real time. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen walks through the subway like nothing happened, despite the very obvious sign that something did. The cameraman tries to warn him. He mumbles nonsense and keeps moving, committed to denial like it's a lifestyle. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen sleeps like a stone while the local rat council hosts a midnight buffet. One climbs the bed frame like it owns the place, another raids the food, and the room turns into Ratatouille, extended cut. The camera pans and the rats start sprinting across the frame like tiny commuters, busy, organized, and completely uninvited, while our hero stays asleep through the whole circus. On this episode of Tweaker Geographic, a specimen promises princess treatment in the flooded habitat. He clears a path, lays down a bag like a stepping stone. Then the plot twist drops. He takes off his shoes, hands them to his partner, and she gives him the fireman's carry across the water. He stays dry, she does the labor. Chivalry isn't dead, it just switched teams.